A podcast we are seeking to lead change while also seeking to understand. We're also here as a platform for leaders to come together to unite, to develop and empower other leaders in the areas of business, family, and community. I am your host, Lafayette Lane, joined by my co-host, John LeBron, and today we are joined by a special guest, Jay Razzouk. Put those clap emojis in the comment section. Put those hands together, make Jay feel real well. Jay has joined us today to have a conversation on how to get your business formed on the right foundation. A little bit about Jay. He is a California business attorney with over 10 years experience litigating across 20 states in matters involving legal compliance at Fortune 500s. He is also the founder of ProScale Legal, coaching and the Secure Scale Method. Jay now helps small business owners to employ legal strategies to protect their business and scale beyond 7 and 8 figures. Jay, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Lafayette, for having me here. And John, very excited to talk about these things.
That's great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, those of you that are watching this, go ahead and share, take a picture, let us know that you're watching, put it in the comment section, let us know that you're enjoying the episode. All right, Jay, let's get the ball rolling, man. We're talking about how to get your business formed on the right foundation. You had 3 areas that I was very interested in on your website that you help businesses and entrepreneurs do, and that is protect their business, elevate the customer experience, and securely scale beyond 7 and 8 figures. Now, that's 3 components there. Could you break each of those down? Can we start with how you help protect people's businesses?
So I help people protect their businesses in a couple different ways. First, I really help them lay down actually, let me starting from number 1, which is mindset. And in terms of those are believers, we might say it's even more your heart. And that's going to be your first and foremost best foundation, because if you have that in place, you might not even need everything else, because you're going to build rock solid relationships. And that actually gets into the second one of how you elevate your customer experience. It's about who you are and what you are to them. And then to protect you also, it's good to just understand the laws and having the right contracts in place. You have the right structures in place. You could have insurance. You could have all these things also that go to make it overall very well-built business. And when you combine those things, to me, you're going to be impenetrable.
Okay, so you said that before the 3, you started with mindset. We're talking about getting your business formed on the right foundation, which I think is really good because everything always does start in the mind. Can you unpack that a little further when you're talking about having that right mindset? What does that really mean?
So I believe we were made to love and to be loved. And that is a very important concept, because at the end of the day, what do we all expect? What do we want? Why are we even alive? You hear a lot of coaches, a lot of business people say, well, we all want to be rich. We want to be successful. We want to, be able to go on vacation. But why does vacation even matter? Why does being successful even matter? It's because of the relationships, our family, our friends, the people. So if we have that mindset of what I call the loving mindset, the golden mindset, now you're going to be in the right place where you're going to be meeting people's core expectation of needing love. And if you look at what the whole set of law we have is focused on, and I'm talking about the thousands, tens of thousands, depending how you count, millions of rules we have, it's all aimed at getting us to not lie, not cheat, not steal, not kill, and not to discriminate. And all of those things actually fall under the scope of love. And so, to me, the best legal advice I've ever read in my entire life is, love, joy, peace, happiness. I mean, you go down the list, self-control. Against these things, there is no law. And if you think about it, if you're loving people, you're not going to be breaking the law. If you're loving people, you're going to be achieving what the law wants you to do, and you're probably going to go be on the law. And you're going to have people who are going to be happy. They're going to be your customers that are going to keep coming back to you. They're going to be your lifelong customers. They're going to be leaving you positive, raving reviews. They're not going to be those people who are going to be upset, feeling like they've been betrayed, and then run and start talking to an attorney who will then figure out how you broke some contract or violated some law. It begins with understanding and meeting people's core expectations, which again, I believe is to be loved.
Very cool. So I love that. So basically we're talking about a heart condition and right.
Love it.
Starting there with the right heart and which is amazing. So I understand that having the right heart, basically it's kind of like I think I was talking to my son. I said, if you always tell the truth, you never have to remember what you said. Right?
Yeah.
You're never sitting there thinking, oh, what was it? How'd it go again? You know what you said. And so, and I get it that it's probably not 100% right. But if you tell the truth, you don't have to remember the story. The next step though is they have the right heart condition. They're treating people right. They're doing the best for their clients, customers, members as they feel they can do. I know you're in California, which probably is one of the states with some of the higher regulations as far as businesses, new businesses. Absolutely. If we were to take a brand new company and say they wanted to start a foundation, what kind of advice would you recommend as far as like legal advice? Does it start with an LLC? Does it start with being incorporated? Is that the beginning? Maybe it doesn't matter. I get those questions a lot. I'm going to start a business. I should probably go get an LLC. Is that really that important?
Great question.
Let me ask you too, like what cars are you driving right now, if you're fine sharing?
Sure.
I drive an Accord.
Right, an Accord.
A Kia Sorento SUV.
He's fancier than me.
Lafayette, why are you driving the Sorento?
Well, initially when I got it, I just liked how comfortable it was. And now that I have a family, it has 3 rows. So nice and spacious. Yes. I'm a bigger guy. It fits all my needs for my family, things of that nature. Yeah.
And then John, why do you have the smaller car?
Well, my family is not very big, but now Lafayette's family is pretty small too, but he's probably 6 foot something, so I get what he's saying. But no, I bought this Honda Accord because I had a similar vehicle years ago when my previous car though was having problems. I bought one that I could purchase, without loans and so forth, and I wanted it to last for quite a while. So that's
it's affordable and it could last a while.
Reliable,
Whereas Lafayette, you need something that was bigger, maybe fit more people, you, and maybe you have special needs, like you would like to go on big trips, maybe you like to go camping, I don't know, right? So is there anything wrong with an Accord? Is there anything wrong with a Sorento?
Not that I'm aware of.
In of itself, right? It's just which one is right for you. And this is the thing, is like corporations are generally great. There's so many good aspects to them. LLCs, there's so many good aspects to them. And maybe most of the time, either one might work, but there are some nuances, and it's going to be just like clothes too. There's not necessarily bad clothes, but some will fit you and some won't. And this is where I really encourage people to, if you got the money early on, it is good to spend like $5,000 up front to set your business up right and work with an attorney who's going to match you to the right business for you. And what's interesting is a lot of people think you stop at just picking between corporation or LLC, or they tell me, oh, I have an S corporation. I think an S corporation is a type of business. And that is actually step 2 of how do you want to be taxed. And what's great is that LLCs, I'll just say this, LLCs are great in that they could be taxed pretty much any way you want it. They could be taxed as you as an individual. They could be taxed as a partnership if there's many people. It could be taxed as an S corporation or a C corporation. But corporations can only be taxed as an S corporation or a C corporation.
Mm-hmm.
And the big question is, when do you want to be taxed as an S corporation?
Jay, can you break down those three differences? Because you said LLC, S corporation, and C corporation. What are those three for our audience, those that don't know what those are? Like myself, I haven't never heard of S or C. I probably know what they are. I've heard of LLC, but I'm not familiar with S and C corporation.
So the LLC is just a type of business entity like a corporation. There's really at the core three types of business entities. There's a corporation, there's an LLC, and then there's individuals. And when two individuals come together, three, we call that a partnership. And then when you tax something, you could be taxed as individuals, you could be taxed as an S corporation, or it could be taxed as a C corporation. Now, the C corporation, when something's taxed as a C corporation, what we're saying is that business entity is going to be taxed as its own separate person. So let's pretend that suddenly we could give life to this corporation and it could stand up and walk around and be with us, and then it'll be separately taxed from you and me. That would be your C corporation. And there could be good reasons to do a C corporation. For example, if you're wanting to do a Kickstarter and you're going to raise millions of dollars in a year, you don't want necessarily to suddenly have your personal income get slammed with millions of dollars. You're now going to hit a new tax bracket. You might get a whole bunch of really bad tax consequences as a result. So that's where like a C corporation could be great. Now, on the other hand, are what we call pass-through entities. This is where they are ignored. The business entity is ignored for tax purposes, and the government wants to look at the individuals. So let's say all three of us have a partnership, or we all have an LLC, or we all have an S corporation. In any of those situations, the government is going to ignore the business entity and will then tax each of us individually. Now, there's just one extra wrinkle. Okay, then you're like, well, what's the difference? What's the difference between an S corporation, right, and then being taxed as just purely as individuals? And it comes down to, how do you want to pay your self-employment tax? Now, if you are just a regular LLC and you have not elected to have it be taxed as an S corporation, so you're plain vanilla LLC, you don't do anything, you just go to LegalZoom, you set it up, and you're running with it, 100% of all the income you make from your LLC will pass on to your personal income taxes, and you will have to pay self-employment tax on it. And when I'm talking about self-employment tax, I'm talking about your FICA taxes, your Social Security, your Medicare tax, and these can be like around 17%. And your Social Security will stop at some point, but your Medicare taxes do not stop. So you make $1 million, $200 million, whatever, you're paying a percentage on that income. And the richer you are, actually, it kicks up a notch. Mm-hmm. So what's great about the S corporation is you pay yourself W-2 wages, and then the rest of it is just pure income that's not subject to self-employment tax. Only your wages are subject to the I want to cut self-employment tax, but your corporation will pay half of it, and then you will pay half of it, just like you were hired by a regular corporation. And then again, the rest of it is free from the self-employment taxes. Huge potential savings. Now, you talk to different accountants, you hear different things, but it seems like the consensus is somewhere between $30,000 and $70,000 in income from your business is that time when you should really start thinking about switching over to being an S corporation.
So basically, the company income stays with a low tax, is what you're saying, outside of the W-2. So basically what you're saying is, you have the company. We have ABC Company. I'm the owner. Lafayette's the owner. We now are employees of ABC Company, drawing a W-2. receiving a salary. Those are taxed at their appropriate W-2 brackets. And then what happens with the remaining company? I know you have write-offs and so forth. How would that get taxed from there? Does it get taxed still or set?
So what we talk about, what gets passed through, the pass-through is going to be your income and losses. So you start off with your top of the line, above the line, that's revenues, and then you subtract from there your expenses, and then you end up with your income, and then it's the income, net income, or it could be a net loss that will then pass on. So the net loss could be great because then you could offset that from other sources of income you have. But then the net income is then what you would then pay as an individual taxes on. Now, if you are for S corporation and an LLC, like a partnership or LLC that's just plain vanilla, not an S corporation, they're ignored. The government is only looking directly at the individuals. So the individual owners will pay the taxes. So the corporation doesn't pay anything. And this is why people love these types of businesses, because only one level of ownership is being taxed, or the business being skipped, and you have one level, the owners themselves, that are being taxed.
Okay.
If you have a C corporation, if you have a C corporation, the corporation gets taxed. Like right now, it's 21%. The government is looking at shooting that up into 30%. And then you issue dividends, and then the dividends get taxed as well. And depending on your income bracket, that could be, I think, around 17+%. So that's a lot of taxes.
Yeah. So they're assuming if you're a C corporation, it's open game to how you're spending that. So you're basically paying taxes on it. I'm guessing you're saying by S corp, we're drawing a wage. That's what we have as the spendable income. And that's what's going to get, everything else is staying with the company, most likely to get reinvested. And that's why it doesn't get taxed. Does that sound about right?
That's right. So think of the C corporation as kind of like a locked vault, and the money goes into there, it stays in there, and it gets used by the business. And the business can choose every now and then to issue dividends. So they'll say, hey, for every share, we'll give you 25 cents, $1. And so those of us who own public companies, you have stock, you might know some of the blue chips or the big companies might, from time to time, give you a dividend. But and so it'd be the same thing if you yourself owned a C corporation. And by the way, there are tax laws that prevent the hoarding of cash within the C corporation. They'll have to periodically go and issue dividends and not have big piles of cash, unless you're Apple and you probably have offshore businesses and you're storing the cash that way. But most of us can't afford the types of accountants. We can't afford the accountants who can figure that stuff out.
Those Switzerland accounts, gotta love those. Malfi, if you have another question, go ahead and I'll follow up.
No, this is really good because I think that you're helping not just us, but entrepreneurs that are listening, business owners that are listening, whether they're just getting started or whether they've been in for a while, especially breaking down those three components that you just did, especially about the excessive taxation piece. That's really, really big. Because when we go to vote for different things, everybody that's an entrepreneur has a different mindset. Well, maybe I'll vote this way because I am a business owner. You just talked about those taxes. I've heard some of the numbers. I am, a future business owner. So, my vote may start swinging another way because these numbers that you just, said. So I get it. I my perspective is a little clearer now. And I think this is really good. I want to keep unpacking this whole protecting your business point that we're on, but kind of from the inside out. So how does a business protect itself from people on the outside? You had mentioned a few of those things. We're in an internet age. So anyone, if I want to find out about your company, I don't have to come. I just put it in Google. I read the reviews. Then I can make a decision whether I want to buy at your company, whether I want to invest based off of other people's experiences, right? whether that's right or wrong. But how does a company protect itself from lawsuits, unnecessary things? Like we seen McDonald's a couple years ago. They were sued by someone that spilled hot coffee on themselves. That person won that lawsuit because on their cup it did not say the coffee was hot, right? And so now every time that you get a cup of coffee on there, it says hot. So how can businesses protect itself? What's some of those measures they can put in place?
Yeah, first couple things you said I want to comment on. First, it's always better to learn from someone else's mistakes. Definitely try to learn from someone else, as you mentioned. Yeah. About the McDonald's one, actually, that one's pretty interesting in that McDonald's made their water scalding hot. I mean, we're talking about like a couple 100 degrees hot because, some people like the real fresh intensity of the super hot. But it was so hot that when it spilled on that grandmother's
lap,
very sensitive spot, it left her with like second, third degree burns, like severely hot. So the question was like, does it even make sense to have something that hot, that dangerous? I mean, it might as well be like a toxic chemical that could be spilled at those temperatures, which comes back to a good point for when you have a business. It's always good to think about, again, are you tending towards lying to people, cheating people, stealing from people, or potentially killing? And part of killing is hurting people. It's good to be mindful of how you might cause injury to someone physically or economically. If you have a good understanding of that, the measures you can take to protect them. And I was blown away even when I read the Bible. There's even this law in there given to the Israelites to make sure they have like a barrier or protection on the roofs, because back then they had more or less flat roofs and people would walk around and be on them. And someone could fall off and get hurt if there wasn't this barrier around to protect them. So even safety was a major part of these laws given to these ancient Israelites. Same thing today. We value safety and protecting people. So we're all under an expectation by the law to watch out for people and protect them. Now, you don't necessarily have to know every single law in and out and how they're going to apply to you if you have this concept in mind. Now, the best way to protect yourself from 360 is following what I call the secure scale method. And it's an acronym, so it's easy to remember. It's very deep, right? I'm only giving you a high level understanding of it. But these are 5 ways that you can protect yourself when you're setting up your business and running it. And the bigger you get, the more important these things become. So the first one is the S for scale. That's going to stand for structures. So these are going to spell out the word scale. The S stands for structures. You need to have the right structures in place to protect you. That starts with picking, are you going to be an LLC or corporation? And sometimes partnership makes the most sense. How do you want to be taxed now? Do you want to be an S Corp? Do you want to be a C Corp? Which one's going to give you the best tax benefits? Then you ask yourself, how am I protecting my intellectual property? You might now need to have a bunch of contracts in place, the right terms in your agreements so that your clients don't steal your stuff, your employees don't steal your stuff, and you're also giving a framework for protection. And something I've noticed going through a lot of agreements, like I like helping online entrepreneurs, they're missing so much in their contracts that could be so helpful for them to prevent or resolve a dispute. That you can have multiple layers in there where if someone has a problem, here's how you handle it. Here's the next step. Here's how you deal with it. And put so many layers between you and them feeling like they need to run to their attorney. I'm just blown away how many people don't have that. So those are structures. Now, the next one is the
right IP. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's right, including protecting your IP.
No, when you're saying protecting your IPs and stuff, are you talking about like non-disclosure agreements, those types of things, NDAs?
That's right. Yeah, so NDAs, that's a separate standalone agreement, we call them, but you could have clauses that are in NDAs as part of your independent contractor agreements.
Okay.
Or I say some people throw it into their client agreements. maybe there's a right situation where if you're sharing trade secrets and things like that with a client, you want them to protect that as well. So yeah, exactly. That's how you can protect your IP. Or like for coaches, in my coaching agreement template that I provide, I specifically have a whole clause where I say, okay, if you're in my coaching program, I'm giving you permission, a license to use my videos, my templates, and things I'm giving you. But if you leave my program early, or you break the rules, whatever, you lose that right to use my stuff. Because there's so many coaches who talk about how someone signs up for their program, downloads everything, cancels it, walks away, and they feel like they have nothing to stop that.
Mm-hmm.
Has that happened to you, Lafayette? I see you nodding.
No, I've seen it though. Of course, I haven't. Hopefully, it will not happen. But people are people, and unfortunately, you have those devious minds. But yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
and I just see so many people put clauses in their contracts trying to stop that, but I'm like, that clause isn't going to do it. You need, a pretty robust IP clause, in my opinion, to stop it. So the next, so we talked about the right structures. Now the next one is going to be community. You need to have the right community, and this involves the right clients. Be picky with who you take. Make sure they're a good match for you and you're a good match for them. Make sure you have the right employees, the right contractors. Don't just hire because you need to fill that position. Again, make sure they're the right person, that you mesh with them, that they're going to, they take seriously your internalized rule of love. And then vendors, your partners, your owners, your investors, like everybody, like really be mindful of who you're working with. And that is going to save you so much time, money, and headache. I have seen the best contracts in the world go wrong because it was just with the wrong person. People ask me all the time, Jay, how do I not get sued? There's no way you can prevent yourself from getting sued. Mm-hmm. You can't stop that. But if you're with the right person and you treat them right, that's probably never going to be an issue. So any questions about that, about community?
No, we're good.
Yeah, that was pretty straightforward, it seems like, right? Putting it into practice is a little bit harder. That's what life teaches you. The next one is an A for the right actions. You must take the right steps on a daily basis to properly run your business. And the best way to know what you should do on a daily basis is to have policies and procedures in place. And now all of a sudden I said that, people cringe, right? Oh no, not a policy, not a procedure. Now we're becoming corporate-y, right? But you know what? Think of it as a good thing. It shouldn't necessarily be there to tie your hand. It should be there to tell you how to handle a situation when it arises. You see it and you know what to do, so you can act quicker, you could act more precisely, you could act more consistently. Then that's why they're there. It's for consistency, because people don't want to see you treat someone really easily and then you go really harsh on someone else when it's the same circumstance. But I definitely don't believe they should get in the way of people not being human, right? We should always be human. So
Absolutely.
that's the right actions. The next one is loss limitations or loss limiters. And this is just a fancy way of saying insurance. So there's all sorts of different types of risks that a business could face. I'm happy to talk about those 5 main risks, but one of those is general liability. And someone could slip and fall at your place. Someone could buy your hot coffee and burn themselves. If you're a consultant, maybe give bad advice and they're very upset. Insurance is there to step in and fill in for you. And depending on your industry, insurance could be very cheap. I've seen insurance for like health coaches as low as like $200 or $300. For chefs, Yeah, chefs could get pretty comprehensive insurance again for around $300 or $400. So it's worth looking around and seeing what's available for you in your industry, and you might be surprised just how affordable it might be. And as you grow, you're going to have to get more insurance. Some of it's required. You hire your first employee, and you have to provide them unemployment, disability, workers' comp insurance. All these benefits are mandatory. And I recommend everybody have as part of your team an insurance broker who'll happily help you navigate the insurance system.
Very cool.
The last and final one is E for the enlightened mindset, which we actually spoke about earlier, where if you're just in your heart, you're in the right place to love people, to be honest with people, you're going to find you're not going to need attorneys most of the time. Your problems aren't going to materialize because people will be happy, they'll be loving you, and they wouldn't even think about suing you.
Very cool. So scale. As in pro scale.
Pro scale, and that's the secure scale method.
I see
And
what
honestly,
you did there.
everything I've countered can fall somewhere in one of those 4 categories or 5 categories.
5 categories. Very cool. So curious. I hear there's an LLC. Typically, someone gets an LLC, if anybody doesn't know, as far as I know. Okay, the average person tells me they get the LLC. So if they get sued, their personal assets are safe, ideally. So they're really just a lawsuit is against the company, not the individuals. Does it really protect somebody in that fashion to that magnitude?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. That's a really good question. And honestly, something I'm so passionate about because I see so many entrepreneurs doing it wrong is they think I have just made an LLC. I went to LegalZoom. I paid for that LLC. I went to this service. I made a corporation. I'm good to go. Now, I want to say like LegalZoom and these services are really good. Like they have really good automation. They have some real good templates. There's nothing wrong with them, but people don't read even what LegalZoom and these other services give them.
It's a lot of
right?
pages.
I mean, we all do that, right? You know, you buy
Where do
new
I
software,
sign?
Right.
you don't read the manual. Yeah, it's human nature. This is why, again, I encourage people to work with attorneys. Pay a little bit extra money so you have a human who will explain things and walk you through the process. I have seen entrepreneurs where they went through the process with a self-help service, paid for the full package, and it's a great package, but then they only filled out the paperwork halfway. And so their corporation is only half formed. And what this means is then if they got hauled into court, that corporation might be worthless. They should have just saved the money and just put it into insurance. They'll probably be better off than having that half-baked corporation. And I've seen it with LLCs too. Just the other day, talking to someone who, formed an LLC for a certain purpose, but then never put anything inside the LLC to then be protected in there and take it out of the realm of personal liability.
Okay.
We need to visualize our businesses as buckets. And unless we put something in the bucket, it's empty. So you got to fill that bucket if you're going to be doing business with that bucket and you want people to sue that bucket. Otherwise, the judge is going to ignore the bucket and going to view you as the bucket.
So the reason I asked that is I've seen people say, "Hey, I went online. It's like $200 in Ohio. Register an LLC. Boom, protected." And I'm thinking, I get that's what it says, but I don't understand how that is all of a sudden the shield of protection against personal liability. So, and this may be too much for this one conversation. Maybe it's a 2.0. I don't know. But so that you said treat it like the buckets. So what do you put in those buckets? Like what goes in there? And maybe I know you're gonna say it's customized to the person. I know it's coming, but Like some example, like give me an idea.
So some of the major things I see people leaving out of the bucket would be like, for example, the intellectual property, your trademarks, for example. So that person will take the trademark, go register it in their own personal name, and pay for it with their own credit card, and or buy some copyright licenses or create some copyrighted works as an individual on their own time or with their own money.
Okay.
And again, you need to get those copyrights. You need to get those trademarks, your assets. I mean, if it's a property, you have to, use a deed to transfer that property from your name to your business's name. So you have to take these legal steps. And it's not necessarily complicated. A lot of attorneys can help you, but you need to take that extra step. So I always view business formation as a two-step process of one, setting up that business entity, and then two, filling that business entity.
So we're really just making sure all those things we did while we were bored and coming up with these ideas are now transferred to the company, essentially.
That's
exactly.
Good. That is so good.
I know it sounds
and
simple. I literally never would have thought to do it, and just like
No.
most people probably don't.
Not at all.
Yeah, nobody talks about it. And do they ever teach it at school? No, they don't. I have a business degree. Maybe you guys do too, and it was never covered.
Yeah.
But and actually there's a third step to properly running your business, and that is then you have to maintain the formalities. So if it's a corporation, you have more formalities. There's a bit more you have to do. You have to have an annual meeting to then annually select the board, who then will have the power to appoint the officers. If you don't do that, in theory, nobody is in charge of your business. And, again, someone could come in and say, well, you don't have a valid business because you're not holding the meetings you need. And I have to say, it varies from state to state. In California, it's just annual meeting of shareholders you need. But other states, you might also have to have that annual board meeting. You need to be doing stuff. You need to be doing it right. You need to be documenting it. LLCs, it's a lot looser on that. That's why for a lot of people, an LLC might be a better approach because it's going to be simpler. You don't have to worry about as much of the paperwork. But it's still a good idea to document your decisions, document everything. But the bigger mistake that I see even more common, including for people who have LLCs, is they have that LLC, they think they're doing business as the LLC, but when they write their contracts, they sign as themselves. They don't put the name of their LLC. You have to name your LLC as the signing party in your contract. And then you need to sign it as like the manager, as the officer of your business. I see so many people sign as owner. You don't have authority usually to sign anything on behalf of business as an owner. And in fact, now you're saying if something goes wrong with this agreement, sue me as the owner. The whole point of having a business
or something.
Yeah, the whole point of having that business was so that you are not liable as an owner.
Oh, wow.
That's a little nuance. That's so important.
Man.
That's why we have you, Jay. That's why we have you.
No, for real. I think we need to do a part 2 just on what you're talking about. The copyrights, the ownership part. You're saying things that, as John said, seem like it would be common sense, but honestly, it's not.
I would love to. Seriously, I'm on a mission to get this stuff out there, and this is what I've been trying to do is just educate, because we're not told these things when we're starting our business.
I think by nature, entrepreneurs are visionary, go get them, grind it out. Let's get this thing rolling. Why would we stop to do some of these things? And I say that from me being 100% guilty. Like, I'm that guy. And so when we started this show, Lafayette texted me and I said, I was in Florida hanging out, and we had talked about it. And I said, let's do it. Let's start in 3 weeks. And he goes, okay. And so we did. Like, very little thought went into. We're just like, I mean, we put thought into it, but we were not waiting, right?
Right.
And so I get it, like, why people do that.
Sure.
It's a balancing act.
Work in to have it destroyed.
That's just it. It's totally a balancing act. If everybody really knew and understood the laws and just how many out there, they probably would get paralyzed. So it's good that people are ignorant and not using that ignorance to freeze them. Like they plow forward. To me, that is an entrepreneur. Someone who says, well, I have this idea. I'm going to make it reality. I'm just going to go for it and see what happens. But when you get to the point where you're seeing some success, you're getting traction, and you have some money to make an investment, as soon as you can, make it a priority to get your business on the right foot, on a more solid foundation, because your problems are only going to magnify as you scale.
Listen, we want our audience to stay connected to what Jay has going on. You can do that several ways. He is under Jay Razzouk. And am I saying that right? Razzouk?
Perfectly.
Thank you. Okay. On LinkedIn, he's at, his Instagram handle is at Jay Razzouk. That is JAYRAZZOUK. And also you can check out his website, www.proscalelegal.com. As always, stay tuned to what we have going on here on Unscripted on our various social media platforms. On Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn, we're Unscripted Authentic Leadership Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at Unscripted Lead and on Instagram at Unscripted Leadership. You also can stream this podcast and all of our podcast episodes wherever you get your podcast platform. From all the major podcasts from Apple to all of those to anywhere, just type in Unscripted Authentic Leadership Podcast. Also, if you're interested in joining a mastermind group, looking for a place to network, looking for a place to connect, looking for a place to get poured into and to pour out into others, to cast your vision, check us out there on unscripted-leadership.com. As always, we pray that you be the leader that God has called you to be. We are here to build bridges and not walls. Bridges connect and walls divide. Until next time.